So off the back of the video we did previously where we looked at this VP diagnostic tool, I wanted to look at getting another tool that would give us some benefit in being able to reset service indicators and so on. So I've done a lot of research for myself to get to this point. I've looked at different Autel products. I've looked at obviously these ones and tried them. I've got one for the Alfa over there, which is the multi-ECU scan software, which works perfectly for that. I would definitely recommend that for that car. But for this car, I wanted something that was going to be convenient, but also give us more ability to do kind of some of the service resets and some of the other stuff as well. I've looked at the iCar soft products. I've looked at the bigger ones of these as well, where you get kind of the tablet version and the ability to kind of interrogate it. The one, I think the iCar soft one, where you have to press the buttons, it's not touch screen, and the other Autel equivalent one, which I think it is touch screen. Another one that's a bit more expensive and so on. But I've opted for this one. Like I say, it comes with one car free that you can add to it, or one manufacturer, I think it is. And then if you wanted to add more cars to it, so where we looked at the Clio before previously, we'd be able to add that to it, but it would be an extra license option. So I've not used it before. It's brand new, still in the box. We've got to set it all up. We need to download the app as it says on here, so we need to do that as well. We need to get it out, we need to configure it, set up the car. So let's have a go. First use, first opening of it, and we'll see how we get on. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is just get this app downloaded. Okay, so with the app downloaded, what I'm going to have to do, exactly the same as we did on the last video, is obviously do a screen record on my phone. So what I'll try and do is obviously make sure that I can narrate over the top of it so that you can understand exactly what it is I'm doing. So when you first open the app, you're met with this login screen with a register button on the middle left. When you click on that, you have to enter in your email address, and then they email you back with a 6-digit verification code. Once you have that, you go to the register screen. I can't remember exactly the step between entering your email the first time to get into this screen, but I think it changes once you first submit your email address. You then enter all the details here, check the tick box and hit register. That then takes you to the next screen where you have to bind the dongle to your account. To do that, there is a QR code on the side of the dongle that you scan using your phone's camera by hitting the scan button. Once it's ready, you can then hit bind, which binds the dongle to your account. Once that is complete, you can then return to the login option, enter your details and log in. So having registered the dongle, what I've done now is just plugged it into the car's OBD port, and you can see straight away we've got the green power light come on. So then with the dongle plugged into the car, what I then did was go back into the app, and I worked out that I needed to go onto me down on the bottom right to go into my settings and my configuration. And then you can see the dongle setting, or the VCI line as it's called, in the middle there is what I tapped on. And it says that it's not connected, but it also says there obviously not connected, turn on Bluetooth in the settings and connect a device. So I then come out of there and obviously went into the Bluetooth settings on the phone to go and connect to that device. So then going into the Bluetooth settings on the phone, down the bottom you can see the AP device sitting right there. So I just tapped on that. That took a couple of seconds obviously for it to connect, and then you can see it coming in connected right at the top. To give the permissions to the phone, you obviously just say allow, and then the VCI at the top right, you can see it's now green. Automatically it picked up straight away that there was a new version available and we were to update the dongle. So we just went through that, hit on update, allowed it to go through, and then you can see it did say connected and now it says not connected, obviously just where it's going through the power cycles to update it. After a few minutes it gave us 100% complete and update successfully, and obviously left us with a nice green healthy screen saying connected, which was great, exactly what we wanted to see. So then we came back out of that and back to the main menu. So then once all that was done, I turned the vehicle ignition on, just with the ignition on, not starting the engine, just the ignition on. And then back in the app I tried to connect to the car for the first time, where I then pressed the diagnostics button at the top. Do we see that? Seeing only 2 options for demo or EOBD, I ended up wasting far too much time trying to work out how to get them to connect and trying to configure it to speak to a Land Rover. Until eventually what I did was realise that there was a big plus button in the not so obvious white bar underneath the EOBD option. So then clicking on that plus button, that's where eventually I worked out that this is where we get our list of cars. So I'll try to talk you through exactly how I did this. But basically I've scrolled down through the list of cars up and down. You can see obviously there's loads of different manufacturers there, and then we come to Land Rover. So I selected Land Rover and it says $21.99, but it also says get it for free now, I think it is. So you get one manufacturer included with the cost of the dongle. So it just says there, do you want to download this? And I said yes. That then downloaded it, and it said you successfully received it, which was great news. And then from there, I believe I then came back out to the screen, went into the diagnostics option again where we had the Land Rover option, clicked on that for acquire, where it started to then download the package. But I won't obviously bore us with sitting here through the whole piece. Well, I'll speed that up now quite dramatically, take us straight through to the end of that, where we'll get to about 99-100% complete, fingers crossed. And at 100% complete, I think that's where it then went to then initiate or install the package. There we go, installing. So this is just all automated, doing on its own. Once it was done, it then completed, and basically that was it, ready to go. From there, we then come out of the app, or we come back out of the application, shall we say, and because that had all been just with the ignition on, doing that, what I then did was started the ignition and started the engine, turned the car on so that it was actually running. So you can see obviously just the dashboard there before I start the ignition and turn the ignition on, turn the engine on. Back in the app for the first time now with the engine running, we try and connect, and we hit on Land Rover, and it tells us that what we need to do is actually download another app for this. So you click on that and that takes you to the link for the Diag Europe link, where you have to download this additional application. From there, obviously I've just added it to my library, so I've clicked on that, and again that just then starts to automatically download, and you can see obviously the timeline just going around. So again, once again, I've speeded that up. It takes a few minutes for it to do that. Clicking on open, when we go into that point, obviously opening up the app, it then loads, and just initially you get the same three options that you have. Obviously if you'd bought more, you'd see the rest of the ones that you'd bought as well. So then tapping on Land Rover, we go into that. It spins round, just obviously loading up the options that we're going to be able to look at. And this is where we want to select the diagnostic type, automatic or manual. So I think we choose the manual option, and this is where we can then enter in the vehicle type. So obviously from our perspective, I've gone into now automatic, and the options down the bottom say read, OK or escape. So I'm going to hit on read. It then reads the car, picks up the VIN number, which I've blanked out there, and then obviously the option then is just to click OK. That then comes back out and just tells you, or you need to then confirm that that is the vehicle type. For me it says a model year 2015. It's quite interesting because mine is actually a 2014, although a late 2014, so I'm guessing it's had the data uploaded or updated at some point in time. And then just coming back out of that, we then go, where did we go from here? I think we went into the diagnosis, and it was either the auto scan or the control unit. So we hit the auto scan. This is where the tool is going to go out and it's going to read all of the different body modules that it can talk to, it can interrogate and negotiate with, so that it can tell you basically or see what fault codes there are that are present in the car, or if there's no fault codes, obviously it just reports that there are no fault codes, which is much more desirable than actually having any faults. So straight away we can see there, just as it's scrolling through, we've got a couple of fault codes, or a fault code that's come up. But what we'll do, I'll just speed this up again, because rather than sit here and waiting through to come through every single one of them, it's going to read through, there we go, just speeding the video. I think it's about 32 different modules that it was able to interrogate and get those messages from. So seeing there, obviously we've got the different problems that we may need to resolve, and looking at the first one, I think just scrolling down, we can see obviously what different modules we can interrogate there. It's quite interesting. And I think the first one, number 7 there, the body control module, just tapping on that, I think you need to tap on it quite properly. It then goes to that module, talks to it, and you can then read the codes specifically for it, and it gives you a little bit of insight that you can freeze it if it's on live information. For this particular code, it says they're intermittent, so at some point it lost communication with that module. Maybe when I was doing a bit of maintenance, taking the headlights out just for a bit of cleaning once upon a time. So from our perspective, I'm not too fussed about that. It's probably historic. So then the next option, just clicking on live data down. So this is all the information related to, I believe, the body module, should we say, or the options that we've got in here. So once you do that, you click on that live data and it takes you through. It starts to read and interrogate all of the different options, or all the different modules, should we say, within that set parameter. And you can see here that there's obviously a massive list of different options, different modules, different pieces that it can talk to. So like I say, this is the first time I've actually used this tool, this Autel AP200 tool. So I'm guessing with the spanner on the right hand side of each of the different options that we get along here, that what we can see is that you'd be able to go into it and whether it's interrogate, whether it's adjust, but you'll see more in the video in a little bit later when we go into some of the other service options, that's where you can really go in and adjust lots of the parameters, and you can really kind of identify exactly what's required. I've picked up one here, just hazard switch, just because it's straight on the dashboard and we can adapt it, make it work or make it not work. So from here, what I was doing was just pressing the hazard switch and I wasn't seeing any change. Eventually what I realized what you had to do was it recognized it when you were holding it, so you can see it comes on there, and that's when I was actually holding the button in. When you let go of it, it comes off again. So that was just to see the communication kind of coming in two-way at that single point in time. Just scrolling through, obviously you can see there's quite a few more different elements there that we can look at, that we can try and interrogate. Going into here, the foot brake switch, again just another one that we can see. So just tapping the brake pedal, you can see it goes on and off. I'm guessing probably if we looked into it, we looked into the spanner option, we'd be able to see what percentage that's being pressed. Maybe there's a different option for that line item to see that element. Scrolling through, obviously you can see from the bar there's loads, absolutely loads there. We didn't even get halfway down. And then erase codes. Do we want to erase the codes? At this point in time, not going to erase the codes, so I just escaped out of that and aborted out of that, and then we come back to the auto scan after we'd read the codes. So here we can see that we've got the next option that I'm going to look at. It's a little bit difficult for me to see on my screen here. This is not too good a resolution while I'm editing the video, but again we can see I think it was at the transmission range selector, a historic fault there. So whether that's once upon a time from a service or something like that, maybe someone's removed it for a bit of clearing, who knows, it might have been the emergency parking brake that they've disconnected something. So again, I'm not going to worry about clearing that code, it's only historic for the time being. Auxiliary heater, anyone with a Land Rover 3 or 4, maybe others will be familiar with problems with a fuel burning heater. So we can look at that, we can see that the control module for that is intermittent. So again, I'm not too fussed about that. I know it works perfectly fine, so it might just be that it's picked up, I don't know, maybe on a damp morning or something like that, that it's lost comms with it potentially. Scrolling on back down through the different modules that it interrogated, you can see there's obviously a lot that it's been able to talk to, and it's really quite interesting actually to know that you'll be able to to interrogate and find out what problems or what faults there are with any one of these. So from there we exited, we come back out and back to the control unit, or looked at the control units, should we say. So this is where you can then go into each of the different respective modules of those 32 that you went into and looked at the diagnostic codes for. Hit the read codes, I think it was, or sorry, come back out of there and went into live data for this one that we have selected now. I'm not sure what it was. I think it was the vehicle height or the suspension, something like that. And what it does, it just then goes and interrogates that module completely independently, so that you can see, say independently, it just talks and gets all the information from all the different parameters that are respective to that module. So we can see here, obviously we've got the the heights, each of the different corners as well. Steering angle or steering wheel angle looks relatively straight to me, or it did look relatively straight when I made the video, but obviously you can see it's just off. And then selecting one of those options just for that right rear corner height, you can go into it, and then kind of where you've got the blue rectangle at the top, it's just the different ways of displaying the chart information. So having selected that one and coming back to the menu, you can see it's just gonna, rather than giving you a digital reading, it's going to display it on a chart. So it's a little bit funky, not particularly necessary, but it's just a different way of showing you how to do it. The information button obviously on the right hand side just gives you the information. So then going back into it, the parameters or the range of which it's reading is set between 2 and 4 millimeters by the looks of it. So I'm guessing you'd be able to adjust that so you can look at a much wider range, and I'm guessing it would probably pick it up automatically regardless if you were parked kind of on an angle with a different measurement, so one wheel was higher or lower than the other. You can see obviously all the other elements that are associated to the ride height, the different voltages for the sensors, the calibration, and everything that's all basically associated to everything with that module. So when you go in and interrogate it and you're looking for all the fault codes, these are all the different items that you can get those fault codes for, the P1001s or whatever it might be that are coming up. So then we can look at this one in particular. We're looking at the calibration offset. So we can see on that rear left height sensor, and the reason why I keep looking at the height calibration is because I'm convinced that I've got a problem with either that rear left corner being too low, or having looked at it and gone through some of these points on here, it's actually, I'm thinking it could actually be the rear right wheel or the rear right corner is actually too high potentially. You can see some of the parameters that we've got in here as we're going through, that you can see that those distances are quite off. But like I said before, it could just be where my vehicle is parked on my driveway and my driveway isn't completely level. But having taken some measurements previously, I know that there is quite a difference between the left and the right hand side. Looking at all these control units, so these are the ones that obviously the AP200 can interrogate and talk to every single module within these different units. So, you know, there's a lot here for you if you were looking to understand what it was capable of for your car. This is obviously a Land Rover we're connected to at the moment. So if you had a Maserati maybe, or something like that, or a Ford Fiesta, for want of a different selection of cars, then, you know, you'd be able to look at and possibly see what you're able to do here. We then come out of it and went back into the other app to see, once we'd looked at that, to see what we were able to do. And coming back into the service option, we can now see here exactly what different service options there are. So for me, like I said, one of the reasons that I bought this tool was because I wanted to be able to do the oil reset. So looking at it, we click on the oil reset option. We've got our Land Rover option, and because we're now in a different app, it needs to go back out to the dongle and interrogate that. Just connect to it, just make that communication. Once again, because you're talking to it, you need to then go into it, connect it to the car, make sure that the configuration is correct, let it read it, confirm that that is the vehicle that you are talking to, say yes to it. And initially I thought that you could just save it and it would pick it up every single time, but when I hit save, it wanted to save kind of the report. So then in the oil reset, you go to the hot function option, and this is where you can see the different ways that you could reset the oils, if it was one car or another, or kind of if you were doing the interval reset as opposed to the actual oil reset itself. But for this option today, I know my car is actually due a service, so I've got the full Land Rover service history on this, so I'm going to let the garage do that so that I maintain that history. Coming back out of it, we then come back into the service options, and we can see the different elements that we can interrogate here, the different systems, the keys, injectors, and this one is the suspension as well. So it's quite annoying that you have to each time go back into it and tell it what car it is and connect to it.
I'm guessing it would be much better if you could save it, but for whatever reason it doesn't let me save it, so just gone through that option again. With the suspension, what we've then got is these different options, and these are the things that you can make the car do using the tool. So if it was maybe, I don't know, your wipers or something like that, you wanted to make sure your wipers were working, you could go into that module, activate it, and it'd turn your wipers on. We're going to look at the suspension geometry setup here. So here we get the options for tight and normal tolerances. So for other Land Rover owners that use the IID tool, I know that there's the options for going into the tight tolerances or normal tolerances mode. But for now, I'm not going to worry about that. I just wanted to look, for the sake of this video, exactly what it was possible for there. So we've come out of that and looking at the height calibration, which is something that I might need to do when I come to confirming my car or setting up, make sure that it is on a flat level before I do that. It gives you some notices to make sure that you are compliant with, that you've done this, you've not got any fault codes or anything like that before you continue. So going through that, obviously just reading, make sure that you are confident with all of those different elements and parameters that you need to comply with before you go into this. Hit OK each time and just make sure that everything is as it needs to be for this height calibration. And once you are happy with all of those points, you can then just keep going through, and it gives you lots of warning to make sure that you're not going to mess it up, or that you've not got 16 bags of concrete in the back left of the vehicle or anything like that. It then says for this point, for the height calibration, obviously to start the engine and make sure that there is no one in the vehicle either, and shut all the doors. And it says about having the window open for routing the cables, but obviously we've got a Bluetooth connection, so we don't need to route any cables through the windows. So I found that I wanted to keep the windows down regardless anyway. When we then go into that, we then went into the height calibration and kind of went into it. It opened up the cross links so that it was going to be able to start and initiate the calibration. And at this point, this is where you'd need to put in the front wheel distances, the measurements, shall we say, or all the measurements, all the four corners, so you'd be able to tell it and take your measurements and pop it in. For now though, for the sake of the video, I just come out of it. I wasn't going to do it today. I'll focus on that more another day. So then coming back to the service option menu, we can see the different options that we've got here, all the different things that you'd be able to make work, shall we say. But you can see the different elements that you can service and interrogate. So that's it. So we're going to come back out of the app now. So there we go. So after a little challenge trying to get it set up initially, where we actually found that we had to hit that plus bar as opposed to just the EOBD, and then we could go into it and select Land Rover. We then had to download the additional app, which was quite interesting, but I think it's obviously paid dividends. And then what we've seen, there's so many different options that we can do. You know, the configurations, it does talk back to the car, it is bi-directional communication, which is obviously much better than the other VPEAK one that we looked at, this one previously, where it's only reads the codes and it doesn't kind of rewrite back to it. So value for money, I think it's actually, yeah, it seems pretty good. I think you really need to make sure that you know what you're doing before you start messing around or playing with some of those settings, because you could get yourself into some challenges, should we say, some difficulties if you weren't quite sure or confident enough as to how to set it up appropriately. But for now, you know, I would recommend it. I think for the value for money, you can do the service resets as well, which is primarily what I was looking for some of the vehicles. So as a comparison between the two, they are two very different tools indeed. This one is kind of a very rudimentary, straightforward, read your diagnostic codes and not a lot more than that. This one obviously is a whole lot more. It is kind of more professionally based with the option to go back to the vehicle. Convenience wise, obviously you'd still be able to take this with you, just as you would this one if you were going on a trip somewhere, going for a drive or whatever it might be, and then you'd be able to read any fault codes or diagnose any errors on the fly as such as you're out and about. If you were stuck somewhere, and then you'd be able to kind of work out what the problem is that's put you into limp home mode or something like that if you had errors on the dashboard or so on. But for now, hopefully that's been useful. If you've enjoyed it, remember to hit like down below. If you haven't done so already,
please hit subscribe coming up here now. Like I always say, the more likes and subscribers I get, the more videos I'll keep making. Some of these points as well, if you've got any questions on them, maybe stick them in the comments down below, and we'll see if we can make some more videos coming up in due course. I will be using this one. I will be buying the Renault package for it soon, because the Clio is due a service, so we're going to be going through that and doing everything on that. But like I say, yeah, if you haven't done so already, please do subscribe coming up here now. Really appreciate your time for watching. Thanks very much, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.